Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 73 on my podcast series on YouTube. Before we get into it, if you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. I am currently in the process of growing this channel, and I want to reach my first 1,000 subscribers this year, so it would really help me a lot if you hit subscribe. And also, I want to open up conversations on this podcast. That's like a big goal of mine, what I want to do here. So if at any point in the podcast episode, I say something that is interesting to you, that sparks a conversation in your own mind, whether you agree with me, disagree with me, I want to know your thoughts on that. So feel free to leave comments, in the section below as we go along. One more quick announcement before we start the podcast. Today's going to be a solo podcast because I had a busy week. I have a gig tonight. I had some things that I had to take care of over the weekend. So I didn't have time to book a guest. So usually when I do solo podcasts, I typically take questions and answers. So today I took questions from my Instagram followers. I just wanted to let you guys know, if for any reason you want to be included in the question and answers on Instagram, either you can find me on Instagram, Pranzata, Pranzata. I have the link to that below, or you can also email me, which I also have below as well, if you have a particular question or topic that you want to talk about on this podcast the next time I do a solo episode. Or honestly, even just drop your question in the comment section. That would help too. So that's my first announcement. Second announcement is I want to keep this channel more organized and make it easier for people to find things. So I some of you may have kind of naturally noticed on your own, but in case you didn't, I want to point it out for you that if you see a thumbnail that's green, that is a clip from my podcast. If you see a thumbnail that's dark blue, that is a full podcast episode. And if you see a thumbnail that is purple, that is a music clip, because I'm a musician as well. And I also want to put out, music on here. If anything changes, like if I need to add another segment of some kind, like for example, let's say I want to start putting comedy clips up or whatever, I'll make that a different color. But, right now, those are the colors. All right, but let's get right into it. Let's get into the questions. I got a lot of really good questions today, so I'm excited about this. Last time, I feel like people were a little bit shy to give me questions, so I had to kind of come up with my own topics to fill in the gaps. But today, I actually got more questions that I could take, so I had to pick my favorites. So that was really exciting for me. All right, so first question. We're going to start with Big Time Mash. He is a loyal listener. He follows me on Instagram. I've known him since high school. He enjoys the podcast. So I love getting questions from him, and I love answering them. So his first question, and I'm going to start with this one because this is something that I've have personal experience with and I've thought about a lot in my life. And his question is, how do you feel about women getting Botox? And then the follow-up question he asked, I actually really don't understand. So maybe he or somebody else could explain this to me. Then he follows by saying, should they get stung by bees instead? I don't get, but let me just repeat the question for you guys. How do you feel about women getting Botox? Should they get stung by bees instead? Maybe there's a joke in that I just totally missed the punchline on. So if somebody can explain the second part of that question to me, please do. But for the first part of the question, I have a lot of thoughts about that. So as far as women getting Botox, this is a big one for me. That has been sort of a mental debate in my head over the years, because on one hand, I really do believe that the best thing a woman can do is try to love as much of her natural self as she could. I really don't see as a whole, I don't see the good in the cosmetic surgery business. You know what I mean? Breast implants, plastic surgeries, that kind of thing. And I understand it's a complex issue. It's not all bad. And I understand one of the things that makes this issue complex is that there are certain things we do that are socially acceptable, that are cosmetic, that no one even thinks twice about. For example, braces, right? People get braces all the time for cosmetic reasons, and I don't think anybody would ever accuse that person of being shallow in any kind of way, because it's just such a normal thing that we do as a society, right? And some people could argue that it's not just cosmetic. The reasons why people get braces, because some people will say that it'll actually help your bite and it'll avoid you from getting TMJ. So there could actually be medical reasons to get braces. But I would say for the most part, people get braces mostly for cosmetic reasons, and no one thinks twice about it, And I mean, like, people wear makeup. I'm wearing makeup right now. I have a gig tonight in Woodbridge for Mardi Gras. I'm playing keyboard. So like, I'm wearing makeup to enhance my facial features so I feel more confident on stage. Like, people dye their hair. Like, people do all kinds of things. So that's why I feel like this is a complex issue, because I don't want to label the beauty industry as just toxic and bad, because it's more complicated than that. However, I do think that overall it is better for women to try to love themselves in their natural form as much as possible. With that being said, I'm a hypocrite because I have gotten Botox. And it's funny to me because there was a time in my life, like I would say 3 or 4 years ago, where I started to become very self-critical of my physical appearance on camera, because, I started podcasting and I started putting out music clips and I started, doing stand-up comedy. And because of that, I was just seeing myself a lot more. Like, I was seeing myself on camera more. I was seeing myself, like, photos that people took of me and then tagged me on Instagram that I didn't even know they did. So to me, it was like always, once I started having to be confronted with my own image on a regular basis, it really got me thinking. Like, it got the wheels turning in my head about this kind of stuff. And I really almost to a way I suffered over this. Like, I was very conflicted in my own spirit over this, because as much as I was like, no, I want to love myself exactly the way I am, I still ended up getting Botox because for whatever reason, and I don't know why, I have never been comfortable with wrinkles on my face, not with other people. And like, that's the funny thing is, well, first of all, for men, I feel like an aged man with wrinkles for some reason comes across, especially if it's like a well-dressed man and like, a man that a very wise man. For some reason, seeing, like, I have a lot of male idols that I look up to that are older and wrinkly, and for some reason on them, their wrinkles look so badass to me. I'm like, oh, this is a representation of a man. Like, he is wise and his wrinkles are just like a representation of his life story. Like, so for example, if a man has those 11 lines or whatever, to me, that's just like, oh, he's done a lot of thinking in his life. And that's where those wrinkles come from. But for some reason, I've never been able to apply that to myself. I've always been incredibly insecure about wrinkling. It's like one of the biggest things that I struggle to get over. So as far as Botox goes, I will say this, I would prefer to get to a place where I didn't feel like I needed to get Botox to feel confident about myself. Like, if there was a way for me to love and accept my wrinkles, I would choose that. I'm not there yet. So I have gotten Botox. I don't have it right now because, if for those of you who don't know, Botox only lasts about like 3 to 4 months, depending on your metabolism. Apparently, if you have a fast metabolism, the Botox gets out of your system quicker. So I actually have a pretty fast metabolism, I guess, because I work out, and also because I'm just like a hyperactive kind of person. Like, if you can't tell by how fast I talk. So for me, like, Botox doesn't last very long. So right now I actually don't have it. I'm natural. But I don't know. Like, I guess personally where I draw the line is with these cosmetic procedures is I'm okay with doing things to enhance what I look like naturally. So for example, like, if I were to get highlights, right, in my hair, I don't want to get like bright red or bright blonde highlights because I feel like that changes who I am. I'm a brunette. So, I might get very subtle highlights that complement my brunette face. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get a nose job. I don't want to get a boob job. Like, at one point I actually wanted to do those types of things. Like, I wanted to get a boob job. And then I finally came to a conclusion that I would much rather just find love and compassion for the body type I was born with. You know what I mean? But so again, where I draw the line personally is I'll do things that enhance the way I look naturally. So I've always been like, all right, well, Botox isn't really changing who I am. It's just preserving who I am, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm like, it's not like I'm not doing things to my face to make my face look completely different. Like, I'm not getting filler to make my cheeks look bigger. Or I'm not doing things like that to actually change the structure of my face. I'm just preserving the face that I had. And that's like how I mentally talk myself into it. But again, like I said, just because I do that, I don't necessarily buy that is the right thing to do. I think I would prefer to get to a place in life where I am totally okay with my wrinkles, and to prefer to get to myself to a place where I can view myself as a wise, intelligent woman, like the way that I view men with wrinkles. Like when I see an older man with wrinkles, I'm like, he is a wise, intelligent man who's had a history. I want to see myself that way as I age, and right now I don't. So honest confession about that. So I don't know. That's all I have to say about that is I guess it's okay to get Botox, but I would prefer to like find a way to not have to do that. And that's something I'm working on. And by the way, like I said, I don't have the Botox right now. So I'm currently dealing with this right now. One thing I do with that is I use a ring light. So like right now there's like a white light shining on my face, which masks the wrinkles I have. And like you see women on Instagram using filters, like the more heavily the filter, the more she's insecure about her wrinkles. That's where that's coming from. But I don't know, it's something I'm working on, and I want to be more open to just like exposing myself exactly how I am, and like needing less beauty lights and more just an authentic me, you know what I mean? But it's a work in progress, so that's where I'm at with that. But that's a good question. The follow-up question about how do you, or should they get stung by bees instead? I have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Is that something that, is that a thing? Like somebody explain that to me. Is that a thing where women are getting stung by bees to use as a form of Botox? I don't know. Okay, so you can explain that to me. Okay, next question is by James Mack Comedy. He is a comedian from New Jersey, New York area. I'm not exactly sure where he lives. I think it's either like Brooklyn, New York, or New Jersey. I'm not sure, but one of those areas. He recently discovered my podcast and he enjoys it. So he actually, because he's also a comedian, he asked me recently to be on the podcast. So actually, I think either next week or the week after, he's going to be there. So that's really exciting. But what he asks me is, what is your point of view on flat tax? I'm going to say it again. James Mack Comedy wants to know, what is your point of view on flat tax? So to be completely honest with you, I actually don't really know a whole lot about the economy. So when you first asked this question, I had to look up what flat tax was in order to formulate my own opinion on this. So from what I understand, from what I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I am totally a newbie at really anything like societal, like history, politics, economics. I'm pretty new at these things, so I have a lot to learn. But from what I understand, flat tax is basically saying that everybody gets taxed the same percentage of their income. That's what I read and what I understand from it. So for example, no matter what your income is, even if you make 10 grand a month, you get taxed 20% of that. Or if you make 2,000 a month, you get taxed 20% of that. As far as I know, that's what it means. So I will answer the question based on that knowledge. So this is interesting because I actually, and like I said earlier, I don't know a whole lot about the economy. So I feel like I can't really give a good answer to this because there could be things about the economy that are more complex than I could see or than I can understand. So this is purely an opinion-based answer. But my opinion is that I see a benefit to both things. I do see a benefit to having flat tax, but I also see a benefit to taxing people based on their income, meaning taxing poor people less and taxing wealthy people more. I see a benefit to both. I'll explain why I see a benefit to both, and then I will ultimately choose which one I lean more towards. So that's how I'm going to break this down. I see a benefit to flat tax because I feel like sometimes when things are very complex, and I would imagine that the economy is one of those things that is very complex, sometimes it's easier just to create a rule, just to say, okay, like this is out of control. We can't come to an agreement on this. Like, let's just create a rule so there's no hard feelings and everything's fair. That I understand. On the other hand, I also see why that could be unfair because, for example, like let's use those figures again. If you're somebody that makes, or let's go even more than 10 grand, let's say 30 grand. If you're somebody that makes 30 grand a month and you get taxed 20, like, and I don't even, by the way, I don't even know like what the, if there was a flat tax, like what the percentage is. I don't know that, but, and actually I don't even know if we, like what, I'm getting like sidetracked because again, I'm new at this stuff. Can someone please explain to me what is our taxing system right now? Like, do we have a flat tax right now or are we taxed differently based on our income? I actually don't know that, but regardless, whatever the case is, if we are taxed based on our income, backtrack. If we are taxed based on flat tax, right? Like, let's say it's 20% just for the sake of the conversation. I can see how this could be a problem because if you're somebody who makes 30 grand a month and you get taxed 20% of your income, I don't know what the actual figures are. Like I don't know what 20% of 30 grand is without a calculator, and I'm using my phones to film this. But I do know that at the end of the month, you're still going to have a decent amount of money for your life. And I do know that somebody who only makes 2 grand a month, if you tax them 20%, it's already hard enough to make a living with 2 grand a month. So to me, it almost seems criminal to like almost take anything from them. You know what I mean? So, but then again, you have to pay taxes. Like it's a duty of Americans. So to me, this is kind of like, again, one of these things that it's like, I do see why both sides are valid. I'm going to lean more towards not a flat tax. I'm going to lean more towards income-based tax because like I said, it doesn't seem fair to me that somebody who is only making 2 grand a month should be taxed the same number as a wealthy person. And I would imagine the counter argument to that is, well, fuck you. Like if I'm wealthy, I had to work hard to get there. Why should I be penalized for that? My counter argument for that is I am somebody who struggles with my bills. I would say I'm doing a little better now, but it's something I've definitely struggled with as an adult woman, you know, paying my own bills. And I want to become wealthy one day. And I know that sounds kind of selfish or arrogant or something, you know, or evil. I don't know. But I would like to become wealthy one day, just simply for the fact that I don't want to struggle for the rest of my life. I want creative freedom, and I want to not worry about like taxes and by taxes I mean like not having enough money to pay for them. I don't mean like not paying for them. I just mean like as somebody who makes less than 5 grand a month. I'm not going to say what my actual income is, but like it is less than 5 grand a month. As somebody who gets paid less than 5 grand a month, I'll tell you, when tax season comes and I have my own business and I have to pay it, sometimes it's hard for me to save enough money to even pay my own taxes. And that's fucking scary. And so I would like to become wealthy just so I don't run into that problem. And by the way, I understand that sometimes wealthy people also run into that problem. Sometimes when people like first start making money, they don't really consider the taxes and they just like start spending their money, and then they get hit with this tax bill at the end of the year and they're like, oh fuck. So I think because I've already experienced this as a low income person, I feel more prepared that if I were to become wealthy, I wouldn't have this issue, you know, because now I understand like the pitfalls of that. But what I'm getting sidetracked. What I'm getting at here is I would like to become wealthy one day so I could stop worrying. And if I were wealthy, I would want to pay taxes. I would want to pay more taxes because that's like, to me, that's one of the goals of becoming wealthy, is to help society. Otherwise, what would be the point of becoming wealthy if you're just like keeping all that wealth to yourself? I feel like that's completely pointless. And I also understand that in order to become that wealthy, you kind of have to be selfish to a degree, because a lot of people who become super wealthy, they have to think about just themselves and they have to do evil things in the process. So it's like a really complex and tricky situation. And also from what I understand, and this is just hearsay, I don't know if this is true, from what I understand, people who are somewhat wealthy pay a good amount of taxes, and people who are extremely wealthy somehow are in this loophole where they don't have to pay taxes barely, is what I've heard. Like that's the word on the street about that, which I think is like, again, I think it's fucked up. Like if I were wealthy, one of my goals would be to somehow use my wealth to give back to society in some type of way. So I don't understand why people wouldn't want to pay more taxes. It just, I don't know. It's a complex issue, and it's one that I would have to like read about more and understand both sides on. Like maybe there is a reason why a wealthy person would object to paying more taxes than somebody with a low income. Maybe they have a valid reason for that and I'm just not seeing it. But personally, because I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who's struggled to pay my bills, I have more compassion for people in my situation. So I would love to be wealthy, and then I would love to use that wealth to help people that have been in the same situation as me. So long, I feel like I rambled a little bit with that answer, but long story short, I do see a good perspective and a good argument for either case, but ultimately I would lean more towards charging poor people less on the taxes and charging wealthy people more. So I don't know. That's where I stand with that, but my mind could be changed if I have convincing evidence otherwise. Okay. Next question is by Okay Maker. She was actually on my podcast. She's a female comedian. She was on my podcast like a week or two ago. One of my I think she was actually the last episode, because this is episode 73. She was episode 72. She asks me, if a person you are with, and I'm assuming she means dating, if a person you are with doesn't want to celebrate holidays with you, what now? Let me repeat the question for those who didn't catch that. If a person you are with doesn't want to celebrate holidays with you, what now? I think relationships are about compromise at the end of the day. So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with being somebody who doesn't want to celebrate holidays. But the truth is, when you enter a relationship and one person loves to celebrate holidays and the other person hates celebrating holidays, then to me, there's only two ways out of this. One, compromise, or two, decide if it's a deal breaker. So I think with that information, like I said, you really need to decide, is there a way to compromise on this issue? And if there's not, then you have to decide, do you want to stay in a relationship where the compromise can't be made? And that goes on either ends, by the way. Like if you're the person who doesn't like celebrating holidays, can you compromise to celebrate it, or is that a deal breaker for you? And vice versa, if you're the person who wants to celebrate, if for some reason your man or woman refuses to celebrate, is that a deal breaker for you? So you just got to first find that out. Second of all, if compromise is willing to be made in some kind of way, I think that's the best thing you could do. And to a degree, I think that's kind of the point of relationships. I feel like, I mean, it's not the main point of relationships. There's obviously a whole bunch of other reasons, like, companionship, friendship, sexual, relationship. Like there's a lot of reasons, to be in a relationship, but compromise is a big one of those. And I think compromise can be a very beautiful thing when you can make it. So I think, for example, I mean, I'll just use my own life as an example of this. I actually personally have some experience with this. When my boyfriend and I first started dating, when Valentine's Day came around, he was pretty vocal and adamant that he hated Valentine's Day. Like he doesn't hate holidays in general. Like he likes celebrating Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that, but he did not like Valentine's Day. He thinks that it's just like a cheesy, Hallmark kind of holiday to make money, and it's pointless. Why have a holiday celebrating love when you can just go out every single day, like any day of the week, and celebrate love? Like it's just, he thinks it's just like kind of a scam for the United States to make money. And to be honest, my argument was like, yeah, you're probably right, but it's a scam that I benefit from because I get a present and I get attention. So I want to celebrate it. Like, so I mean, that could be selfish, but that was my honest opinion, was like, yeah, I mean, if it was a scam, if it were the other way around, if there was a holiday that celebrated like blowjobs, like if Valentine's Day was a day that like every woman, if Valentine's Day was a day where every man got a blowjob, like I'm pretty sure men would then love Valentine's Day. You know what I mean? So to me, it was just kind of like, I wanted to celebrate it and he didn't. So we came up with a compromise, and the compromise was he would buy me a gift, but we wouldn't make like a big deal about Valentine's Day. Like we wouldn't put this like high stress on it, like where we have to put on a suit and tie and like go to a fancy restaurant with like wine and martinis. And like I was okay with that compromise because I felt like that was a really happy middle ground, because it's like on one hand it's honoring his perspective. It's like, okay, I do see where you're coming from. It is a holiday that's kind of like really an economy money maker. But on one hand, like I want to feel special. I don't want to be like left out. Like I don't want to feel like all my friends are getting flowers and like posting them on Instagram and I'm this like fucking loser. You know what I mean? So to us, the compromise was like, hey, like I'll get you a gift and we can do something cute and special around the house, or like even we can go to like a low key restaurant, but like let's not make this whole like serious deal out of it. It's too high pressure. And I was like, I was okay with that compromise. I'm like, that's fine with me. I like that. I think that's a good, healthy compromise for a situation like that. I think if you had a boyfriend who was just like, nope, I don't celebrate it and fuck you. I mean, like, I got to be honest, to me, that could be a deal breaker. And that's only something you can really decide for yourself. But I think the beauty of relationships is learning to make compromise in these types of situations. And I actually think it makes you a better person when you can learn to love and respect other people's perspectives and find a middle ground. And I think that's true for society. I don't even think that's true for relationships on a personal level, but just even for society as a whole. Like, I do think there is a beauty to being able to really, truly listen and understand another person's perspective on things and try to meet them in the middle. It's not always possible. You know, I've been in situations where I couldn't meet somebody in the middle on things, and you know, that's a whole nother story. But when it's possible and it could be done, I do think it's a beautiful thing when that can be accomplished. So yeah, compromise is my answer on that one. And then if compromise can't be made, decide if you want to throw them in the trash, you know? Okay, next question. Fourth question. Patrick, all right. Patrick Haggerty Comedy. So he's a stand-up comedian. He's also been on my podcast. We've done work together in roast battles. He often judges roast battles. So he's judged me in roast battles and everything like that. And I adore this guy. He's super funny, loving guy. But this question, and I can talk to him like this because he's a friend. What the fuck kind of question is this? I can't tell if you're being serious or joking, but this question sucks. But Patrick Haggerty Comedy asks, what's the best planet? What kind of fucking question is that? So I'm just going to humor him because if you're being serious, I'm sorry that I don't understand why this is a good question. But if you're being funny, I'm actually going to humor you and try to answer the question. I'm going to say the best planet is Earth. Duh, because we're living on it. As far as I know, as far as we know that science has brought us so far, it's the only planet we can live on and thrive on, except possibly Mars. So Earth is clearly the best planet. Mars, if we're talking like what's the best planet that's not Earth, I guess then it would have to be Mars, right? Because we also have potential to live on Mars, from what I understand. And then if you're strictly talking what's my favorite planet just because it's cool, Saturn, because of the rings. It's just something unique, I guess. Like something about the name Saturn and like the uniqueness of Saturn's rings and everything like that strikes me as something different and fun. But other than that, I really don't know how to answer your question or understand the point of your dumb fucking question. Sorry. Next question. Big Time Mash. He actually was the one who asked me the first question about Botox, and he's returning. So Big Time Mash wants to know. He wants to know, how were you able to stop watching porn? So let me repeat the question. Big Time Mash, who also asked the first question, he asked another question, and he wants to know, how how was I able to stop watching porn? So recently I put out a video on YouTube. It was a podcast clip, and it was a segment from a larger podcast, and it was a segment about why I chose to stop watching pornography. If you want, this video for some reason did well, like compared to the videos on my podcast. And it's interesting because I was actually extremely nervous about putting out this video. I thought that I would get a lot of negative backlash from people because I thought, porn is so normal and everybody does it. So if I talk about why I stopped watching it, I was worried that I was going to come across as some like Bible belter or something like that, which isn't the case, by the way. Like I do see why porn is an exciting thing, and I'm not like this like sexually conservative person necessarily either. So I was worried I was going to get a lot of negative backlash about that one, but to my surprise, I actually got a lot of people who reached out to me about that. I do wish they would have like left the comments in the comment section instead of reaching out to me personally, because it would have helped grow the channel. But that's me just being selfish. On a serious note, a lot of people reached out to me privately, either texted me or called me or sent me an Instagram message saying how much it meant to them that I released that video, because they too had been in a situation where pornography was something damaging for them. And by the way, I was getting messages from both men and women. I was getting messages from men saying like, hey, I thought porn was normal, and then after a while I realized it was controlling my life. Like I had an addiction for it, and it was like a huge distraction in my life and whatnot. And then I also had women reaching out to me saying like, hey, my husband or boyfriend had a porn addiction and it like totally destroyed my self-esteem in the relationship. And so I realized, like, while I thought this was going to be a controversial video, it was actually something that a lot of people related to, and that meant a lot to me. So I'm not going to like really discuss the details of why I quit watching pornography. If you want to know more about that, I'll put a link to that video below so you can click on that and watch it later. I'm just going to stick to the question at hand, which is how I was able to stop watching pornography. And honestly, my answer to that question is it's to me, quitting things, like, it's really no different than quitting cigarettes. For me personally, I've never been like somebody who weaned off of things. That's not something I was ever able to do. Like, for example, if I want to quit smoking, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to have one cigarette today and then, no. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to have 3 cigarettes today and then 2 next month. That never really worked for me. What always worked for me personally was just cold turkey. And the only like I'm the type of person who could have had like a pack of cigarettes one day and then the next day be like, all right, I'm done. And that's just something that I do. How do I, and that's the same thing I did with pornography, by the way. It wasn't something that I just like started watching it less. It's something that I just decided to stop one day, and I did. How I got to that point that I was able to just suddenly stop it was honestly knowledge and thinking about it more. So it wasn't like an overnight. It wasn't like, oh, I just one day read something that disturbed me about pornography and then quit the next day. It was kind of something that was slowly coming in the back of my head over time, where like I would use pornography and I would masturbate to it. And literally while I was doing it, I would, my mind's like sidetracking right now, but I'll get back to it later. I'd be in the middle of like watching pornography and masturbating, and while I'm watching it, I would like feel something in my gut saying like, I feel like the woman's facial expression in this video is that she's not happy doing this, or something. Like something would feel weird inside my body, but I would just like suppress those feelings and then just keep doing it. So like I said, it wasn't an overnight fix. It was really just more paying attention to that feeling and learning more about that feeling over time. Like not continuing to suppress that feeling, to ask more questions about that feeling. So over time, I just started reading more about pornography in the modern era, and reading about how it has had a negative impact on society and stuff like that. And I also just want to say that I read this quote recently that it wasn't about pornography. It was about government structures. And it basically said that it's one of my, by the way, I'm probably going to annoy people with this quote because I'm probably going to use it multiple times on the podcast. So I'm just warning you about that. The quote was, for every type of government structure, there is an evil twin for it. So what that basically means is that when people try to solve a problem, you know what I mean? Like, and they come up with a system to solve a problem, you know, and government structures being that, you know, a democracy, a monarchy, etc. There may be good reasons to have those. Government structures, and you might see some beauty or like the closest thing to utopia by having a certain thing in mind. But at some point, you're going to have a problem. And then that's why they said like every government structure has an evil twin, meaning there's no such thing as a utopia. Everything that exists, if there's good in it, there's also bad in it. And I now listen to this quote and apply it to everything. And I'm going to use that quote right now for pornography. I feel like it's more of a complex issue than it seems to be because, like, again, every good thing has an evil twin. What that means is there are good things about pornography. Like, there are valid reasons why people should watch it. You know, somebody could feel lonely, you know, and that's really the only way they could get their needs met at the time because they can't find a partner. There could be people that for whatever reason, whether they have a certain disability or a physical handicap of some time, maybe they can't find a partner and that's their only experience of sexual satisfaction. You know what I mean? Or maybe the people making the videos, maybe they can't find any other way to pay their bills and make money. And that's the only conclusion that they've been able to figure out. So I'm not saying that there aren't valid reasons to use pornography. But what I'm saying is every idea, like they said about the government structure, every idea has its evil twin. And to me, the evil twin of this was realizing that while there were good things about pornography, there's also bad things about it too. And there's also reasons why it could be a bad thing for society. And then when I started paying attention to the two different sides, the good and the evil of this issue, I personally started to realize that there was more evil and damage being done by the industry than good. There is good in there are good things about the industry, but more or less it's contributing to society in a negative way. And I think for me, like going forward, that's going to kind of be my guidance of how to deal with any issue that I can't decide on, is like understanding that there's good and bad. There's good and evil to every single complex issue. And the answer isn't to find utopia. The answer is to find the closest thing to it. So you're going to find a solution that still has a lot of flaws. But it's better to find the lesser evil, the solution with the less flaws is the answer for me. So long story short, to answer your question, to me, it wasn't like I weaned myself off of pornography. It was more that I just really started listening to that voice inside my head saying like, hey, this could be a bad thing. And then I started doing my research on it. And then once I finally realized that I truly believed that this was more negative than good, I then had the confidence and the courage to just stop because I realized I didn't want to contribute to the greater good in society. You know, I mean, I said that backwards. I didn't want to contribute. I wanted to contribute to the greater good of society. I didn't want to contribute to one of society's evils, you know? So that's how I did it. It was just really just knowledge, like knowledge over time. Okay. Next question. What's your favorite? Okay, this question I feel like could be a little bit like, it's like feels like a selfish question to answer, but I'm going to answer it anyways because I also think it's good to have self-love and self-compassion. The question is, what is your favorite thing about yourself? So Jesus Spiffy, who also is a podcaster and who's a fan of my podcast, he asks me, what is my favorite thing about myself? Okay, I guess we'll start with shallow things and then we'll start with more personality type things. If we're talking strictly shallow, like appearance type things, I guess if I were to go by the data, like of what type of feedback that I've gotten from like people and ex-boyfriends, the data clearly shows that my best attributes are my ass and my hair. I've always gotten compliments from ex-boyfriends and, even female, best friends and stuff. Like I've gotten a lot of compliments about, my hips. Like I have a kind of a skinny figure, but larger hips, which is I think society likes that. And I've also gotten a lot of compliments about my hair. It might not be doing justice right now, but I have like pretty thick, like wavy hair. It's a little like wet. I just got out of the shower I'm like literally wearing a bathrobe, by the way, but I got out of the shower not too long ago. So it's kind of like wet and flat right now, but like when it dries, it's like pretty thick. So yeah, data, definitely ass and hair are probably my best like physical attributes. What I would choose though, because I feel like it's easy to choose things that other people compliment me on. It feels more empowering to somehow choose my own thing. So I'm going to say my favorite thing about my physical self would be my nose, because, going back to the Botox conversation and learning how to love yourself exactly how you are. And, like I said earlier in this podcast episode, I feel insecure about my wrinkles and I don't want to feel that way. I want to be comfortable exactly how I am. I'm going to say my nose is my favorite physical attribute because it is one thing that I've gained confidence and love for, even though my nose is not what society would call a beautiful nose. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm just going to show you guys a side profile of my nose if you want to know what I'm talking about. I have like, I guess you would call it like a Greek nose or an alkaline nose or something like that. But I have like that bump on my nose and I have quite a long, skinny, protruding nose. Like a lot of people have asked me like, are you Jewish? And that type of thing. So like, it's something that when I was younger made me feel really insecure. But for whatever reason, as I grew up, I learned to just love my nose and appreciate it as a unique part of my face. Like, it's not like society would tell me to get a nose job. If I wanted to be perfect and beautiful, society would have me get a nose job. But it's one thing that I've come to just be like, fuck you, I like this nose. Again, I wish I could apply that sentiment to more things about myself, like my wrinkles and whatnot. So I'm not like 100% the most confident person, but I love my nose because it is one thing that I've learned to just own. And like I look up to other women who have weird noses. See, like, it sounds negative, weird noses, but you know what I mean? Like not conventionally beautiful noses. Like I think Barbra Streisand is gorgeous. I think, there's just like different women like that I'm like, I kind of like idolize them in that way where I'm like, that's fucking badass that they could just be their natural self and still shine so beautifully, So I don't know. I would say my nose. If we're talking non-physical, like if we're talking strictly personality type things, less shallow things, I guess you could say, but I guess they could also be shallow because, people could have shallow views of themselves about their personality as well. But you know what I mean? I would say my favorite thing about my personality would have to be my analytical side, which I think is it's kind of a blessing and a curse to be analytical. Because on one hand, I think being analytical is the reason why I'm even able to podcast. Like a lot of people have like come up to me that have listened to my podcast and they're like, how could you talk so much? Like how, like you don't stop talking. Like you don't shut up. You know what I mean? Like in a positive way, and I'm just like, cause podcasting is kind of a natural medium for me because I live in my own head talking to myself all day. I'm like super analytical. So it kind of comes natural to me to be able to talk about these things and break them down on this podcasting medium. So yeah, I would say like being analytical is something I really appreciate about myself, because it gives me the opportunity to podcast. But on the other hand, it could also be it's a blessing, but it could also be a curse because sometimes I find myself overthinking and analyzing about things that I shouldn't be. like I'm not like, I feel like women in general tend to be pretty analytical, and this can be a dangerous thing for like the men they're dating because like a woman will be like the first person to figure out like who you dated, who you fucked, who's your hot coworker. Like women will figure that shit out. So that's what I mean by sometimes being analytical is negative because you end up like going down these rabbit holes of like things that are hurtful for you. I'm like working on a stand-up bit. Nobody take this. I said it first, so if I hear it on stage, I know where you got it from. But I'm currently working on a stand-up bit right now about how like I read. I was trying to educate myself about science, so I was reading a science book, and in the book it talked about quantum physics and parallel universes. And there's a theory, a scientific theory, that you exist in multiple universes, like endless universes, and any possible thing that you could do exists in that universe. And like, so the joke I'm writing, in the stand-up bit is like, like a woman will use that information and be like, I knew he was fucking his coworker. He's fucking her in the parallel universe. You know what I mean? So that's just like kind of an example of what I'm talking about how being analytical could be dangerous in that way, because you somehow figure out things you don't want to figure out. But long story short, I would say that's my favorite thing about myself is my analytical side. And then I guess also open-mindedness, I would say. And again, that could come across as shallow or arrogant to say like I'm so open-minded, but I do feel like I am the type of person who like likes to play devil's advocate, I guess you could say. Like when somebody says something, I try to find like the opposite of that, and I do it no matter what. So like, by the way, public apology to all my friends, like if I've ever challenged you or annoyed you like in that kind of way. Like it's just like, it's like a hobby, it's like I'm passionate about it, like I love doing it. Like if somebody makes claims something as profound, even if I agree with them, I'll try to argue it from the other perspective just for fun. Like it's something I like to do. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe in a parallel universe, I could be a lawyer, but it is something that I like about myself. And again, it's another one of those things that I feel like gives me the ability to podcast, because I'm able to kind of break things down and try my best to see things from multiple angles. And I'm not perfect at it. There's a lot of things that like I do sometimes catch myself getting stuck on an idea and thinking that my idea is correct, and then like later on realize that, oh wow, I was wrong about that, but it is something that I genuinely like. Okay, I have 2 more things I want to talk about. They're not questions, they're just like topics that I wanted to bring up on my own. The first one is, I wrote down on my notes here, ethics of clickbait. Clickbait meaning like, when I'm making this podcast and I put out a title or a thumbnail that's like risque or controversial in some kind of way in order to get people in, I want to talk about the ethics of that. And I'm still in a position where I don't know how to navigate this like correctly, because I'm pretty new at like the marketing things of my podcast. But something interesting I noticed lately was that I just recently put out a video about Jordan Peterson, and I originally titled the video, why, this is like totally clickbait exaggeration of the video, but I titled the video, Why Everybody Hates Jordan Peterson. And I don't know, I thought it would pique people's interest. And I realized later that this was totally clickbait and totally an exaggeration of what the video was about. It wasn't a total exaggeration, because the main content of the clip was about how he was at risk of losing his license, and how I disagreed with that, and I thought that he was still a great public figure for psychology regardless of his political opinions, and I talked about how I had such a positive impact on that. So it's like I wasn't totally lying, like I was talking about the public disdain for Jordan Peterson, but I phrased it in a way that was like everybody hates him. And what I noticed, which was interesting, was that people were commenting in the comment section like, what do you mean everybody hates him? Like, he's so loved, what's wrong with you? And like, so after a while I realized like, oh shit, like my title just delivered the opposite of what I was trying to say, because probably some people saw the title and didn't even listen to the video. So it really got me thinking about the ethics of clickbait. I don't have an answer to that, but it's something I'm currently thinking about. What are the ethics of clickbait? You know what I mean? Like, is it unethical to exaggerate about something in your title if the message of the video is something positive? I don't really know the answer to that. And I think that's like a philosophical question. Like, so for example, I mean, let's just use politics, for example. It happens in politics all the time. Both sides of politics, like, they kind of do what's called a smear campaign. They make exaggerated articles about each other in order to win the election. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, if whoever is trying to win the election has positive goals in mind for society, is it technically evil to do a smear campaign? You know, smear campaign is kind of like clickbait in a weird way. You know what I'm saying? Or it's something I've always thought about, and I don't really know the answer to that. Like, if the message and the intent behind the clickbait is to do something positive for society, is the clickbait inherently a bad thing? Funny example, I'm also writing a bit about this in comedy as well. Like, what if the Holy Bible had like a picture of tits on the cover and just to draw people's attention, right? And like, but what if the message or the point of the Bible was to try to spread good for society? Would that be evil? Like, would it be evil to use clickbait to draw people in to tell them something else? I don't know. So it really got me thinking, and it got me, like, I just naturally did those clickbaity titles because I thought that's just what you did. Like, I saw everybody doing it. But then, like, once I got that reaction, it really started to make me think, like, is that just because I've said this before in the last podcast too, just because this is a normal behavior, is it the correct behavior? Is it an ethical behavior? So it's something I want to think about. And I think going forward, I'm going to try to be more honest and less exaggerated in the thumbnails. I mean, I can't guarantee that'll always be the case, because unfortunately, I think if you want to do this to a degree, you do have to like play by the rules of the game in a way. But I do feel weird about it sometimes. And I do sometimes I'm really not sure if that's the right thing to do. So I just kind of wanted to like say I'm sorry to anybody who has been upset about that. It is something I'm thinking about, and I'm not just doing it like without feeling a certain kind of way about it, you know? So something I'm going to think about more, and I'd be curious to know what are your opinions on that? Like, what do you guys think? Do you guys think clickbait is evil? Should public figures do their best to have honest titles, or are they just going to get nowhere by doing that? You know what I mean? Like, do they have to play the game and be a little evil in order to accomplish the greater good? I don't know. It's something I thought about. All right, one more topic I did want to talk about with you guys, and then we're going to reach the end of the episode because we're reaching the hour mark. I wanted to talk about a person who is a huge point of conflict when he comes up in conversation. And that person is Elon Musk. And again, I've said this before on my podcast. I don't want to come across like I'm bringing up the controversial thing just to get clicks. You know what I mean? I don't want to come across that way, or I don't want to become that. Like, I don't want to become somebody who just talks about what's controversial just because that's what society's talking about. And that's how you guys get what I'm saying. I don't want to just join the wave for the sake of it, but I do actually genuinely want to bring him up because I noticed something interesting about him when he came up, not about him, but like about the emotions that he elicits when he comes up in conversation. So, and I were listening to a podcast the other day. We were listening to, I think it was a David Goggins podcast, and both and I agreed that we like David Goggins. But anyways, where I'm going with this and how Elon Musk has to do with this is that I liked David Goggins, but somewhere in the podcast clip, I noticed that the topic of Elon Musk came up, and David Goggins was in favor of Elon Musk. Like, he had positive things to say about him. And then all of a sudden I noticed like got like all jittery because he hates Elon Musk. And I just thought that was like, this was an interesting thing I wanted to talk about and point out, because I've noticed this is just like one example of something that I see going on in society right now. I have noticed that when something comes up that has been politicized in some type of way, and I do feel like Elon Musk has been politicized. Like he has been politicized, which is interesting because I feel like he used to be like a spokesperson for the left, and now he's been kind of like a spokesperson for the right. But I have noticed something interesting, that when a certain figure or topic comes up that is on the opposite team of your team, it just elicits all these emotions, and people kind of go down these like rabbit holes, like these mental rabbit holes of like, oh, you know, David Goggins likes Elon Musk. Well, now David Goggins must be like on the right, and he must be anti-climate change, and he must be pro this and pro that. Like, people go down these like mental rabbit holes as soon as they hear that somebody likes somebody of the opposite team. They automatically just like go down this path of like, oh, he's on the right, and it's just like, slow down. What I wanted to point that out is that like that's a common way people respond to those types of things. And for some reason, this got the wheels turning in my head about politics and about the division of politics. Because, okay, for example, I love David Goggins. I trust him. And actually, I'm not even going to use David Goggins as the example. I'm going to use Lex Fridman as the example, because Lex Fridman is also a supporter of Elon Musk. He also thinks very highly of Elon Musk. So forget David Goggins. Let's go for Elon. Let's go for Lex Fridman. Lex Fridman is a supporter of Elon Musk. I can confidently say that Lex Fridman is a very intelligent, loving, good person who wants to do good for society. But he likes Elon Musk. Okay, is also, and I could confidently say, I believe is also a very intelligent person who wants to do good things for society, right? So to me, this is an interesting situation, because it's like, I love and trust both these people. I look up to both these people. I trust both of these people's opinions, but they're both saying something completely different about Elon Musk. And from what I understand is that it seems to be that the people who are pro Elon Musk believe that he is a unique individual who is thinking about the far future, who wants to get people to Mars. And he's somebody that we need right now, because not a lot of people have that mindset to like really think about the far, far future. Because if we had people thinking about the far, far future, we may have never been in the situation we are now with the climate change and everything like that. So it's like people like this who are focused on 500 years from now as opposed to the now. We need those people, and he's a unique person who's willing to fight that fight that not a lot of people are willing to fight. That's how the people who are pro him feel. The people who are anti him feel that Elon Musk is full of shit, that people glorify him and they think that he's this heroic figure. You know, people think that he's this heroic figure, but really he doesn't give a fuck. It's not about any of that. He's just fooling people and scamming people for their money. It's really just about his ego, etc. So what I find interesting about this is that, like I said, going back to what I said before, I love, I trust him. I also love and trust Lex Fridman, and who I also think is a wonderful person. And they're both saying completely different things. So to me, what that is saying is that somebody's wrong and somebody is being fooled, you know? So like, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I just wanted to point out to people that, and the reason I'm bringing up that, the reason I kept saying over and over again that like, these are both good, loving people that have two different beliefs. I kept emphasizing that and making that clear because I wanted to bring up to people that even good, honest people could accidentally fall susceptible to bad ideas. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I do feel like that is a problem we have in society right now. That like, if somebody brings up an idea that they disagree with, they go down these mental rabbit holes of like, oh, they're this, they're it's just like, slow down. Let's just take a moment to realize that you can be a very good person and accidentally fall victim to like fake news articles. You know what I mean? And so who's correct in that situation? I have no fucking clue. I personally don't have an opinion on Elon Musk either way, because I don't really know enough about him or this situation. Either somebody's wrong, like or maybe nobody's wrong. Maybe there's just like a combination of the truth. Like maybe he is this egotistical maniac, but for whatever reason, this egotistical maniac is able to like solve problems that we need. You know, maybe there's like a combination of the truth. I don't know. But like, that's not even the point. The point I'm trying to make isn't like, is Elon Musk a good person or a bad person. The point I'm trying to make is I just wanted to point out that you can be a good person and still have shitty ideas that are opposite of yours. You know what I mean? And to me, that was like very clear evidence of like, we don't have to hate somebody just because they have different ideas than you. You know what I mean? You don't have to have disdain for somebody just because they have different ideas than you. I think we should have compassion and understanding that maybe good, honest people might accidentally fall victim. You know, for example, I guess what I'm trying to say about this is like, let's say Elon Musk is a piece of shit, and that's actually the truth. And for some reason, these brilliant people like Lex Fridman believe that he's a good person. Let's say they're actually being fooled. Does that mean we should not like Lex Fridman? And does that mean we should not honor the good that Lex Fridman is doing for the world just because he fell victim to a bad idea? You know what I mean? I don't know. I just think it's something to think about. And I feel like the conversation about politics are so divided gets like thrown out there without really like an honest explanation of what that means. And I feel like it's kind of like cliche, like politics are divided, and people always talk about that. But I feel like that's kind of a clear example of what politics being divided means. I think in general as a society. Holy shit! I just heard the loudest thunder ever. That was fucking freaky. Anyways, long story short, I feel like I want to personally start paying more attention to stuff like that. Like, I want to realize that I could fall victim to bad ideas. Like, I could accidentally believe something stupid. And so could good people. You know what I mean? We're all human, and we all are susceptible to falling for the quote unquote fake news or the fake articles. You know, good, honest people could accidentally fall into bad ideas, you know? And I think it's important to continue to have love and compassion for people regardless of what their ideas are, and really see things at face value, you know? So David Goggins likes Elon Musk. Okay. Maybe Elon Musk sucks. Okay. Does that mean we should just totally discredit David Goggins and suddenly lump him into this like list of shitty things just because he has a different idea? You know, I don't know. I don't agree with that. And I do want to make a point to continue to keep on bringing that up. And that's really all I have to say about that. I kind of went into a weird like rant about that. So I'm sorry if that was a little out there, but I'm going to try to continue to articulate that the best that I could. And hopefully as time goes on, I can get closer and closer to being able to articulate that as clear as I possibly could. Anyways, that's it. This is the Pranzata Podcast. Again, this is episode 73. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to come back and stick around and see more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And again, don't forget to comment on anything we talked about throughout the podcast. And again, don't forget to comment on anything that we talked about throughout the podcast. If something resonated with you, if something made you mad and you don't agree with me, whatever. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I want to hear what your ideas are. That's my goal of this podcast. And that's it. Pranzata Podcast, episode number 73. Have a good night, guys. Bye.